I always get, well, I'm kind of always on the lookout for particularly nice pieces of wood. And after I cut those floor joists out of the center of that big log, I had these two big side slabs. Well, normally, when I cut those, I cut them that out with this Haddon lumber maker. But these two big side slabs, they were like that thick. Yeah, this is the thick end. There was nice clear oak. So I thought, well, normally what I've been doing then, I save those, cut them the other way with the lumber maker, like what this one is. Oh, and then I'll cut a 2-inch board, and that'll be for floorboards. But that was too good. It was nice clear oak. So I figured, well, I'll save that for a different project. I always get involved in these side projects as I go along. Like this is the end of one slab after I took that good end off, but that's real knotty. It's actually too knotty to use. I could maybe make floorboards out of part of it. Little tight knots I don't mind, but I don't want those big ones. But the other end, one end is there. The middle part I made a pig out of. It was too knotty to use for floorboards. So I figured, well, I'll make another bench just to have. And, I could always, pigs are disposable. I can knock one together in about a half hour. And if a pig breaks a leg or you cut into it with a saw or something, it's no big deal. I use them like sawhorses, whatever. They end up being firewood in the end. So I don't spend a lot of time on a pig. But I think, I'd like to make like a little desk or something, or a table kind of, out of oak. I don't normally work, oak is not the friendliest wood to work with. I prefer to work with ash. But if you get a good piece, like the butt end of this log, like I say, was clear with not knots or anything in it, just a real good straight piece of wood. So I figure that's worth saving. The reason it kind of looks brown, the outside, after I cut that end off, I put pine tar on it just to preserve it, because it was raining. And I'll do the same now, but these I actually cut 1.25 inches, and I will cut them to 1 foot wide, and then I'll plane them down to 1 inch. But I'll leave them set for a while. Because oak is a warping, cracking wood, but I'll have to coat the ends. Well, I still coat it because I did coat the ends before, but I'll go and cut that one now and get a couple good boards out of that, and still have a big enough part I can do some work with the legs and the side rails and stuff. Well, one thing I was going to bring up, I get asked all the time for dimensions or plans, but there again, I don't work from plans. I kind of make this up as I go along, but like that shaving horse, I get asked real often, what are the plans for that? Well, there wasn't. But the same, I have people constantly asking for plans for my old loom. Well, because I don't. People always say, "Well, if I had plans, I could have my husband make it." Well, you're putting a lot of faith in him, putting a lot of pressure on him. In the first place, that stuff's not made. It's made out of not regular dimensional lumber. Like it's not 2x4s and 2x6s. Not like you can buy. So unless you're able to mill your own wood and you understand wood, there's a lot more that goes into it. it would be a hell of a burden to put on somebody. Make me one like that, unless you really know what you're doing. Uh, it's too big a task. If somebody wants to make like a loom or like a shaving horse, there are plenty of plans online that are using dimensional lumber that you're familiar with and that you can get. But to work with just plain wood like that, out of a tree, it's not that easy unless you have some experience at it. And the only way you get experience is to screw it up a few times, make some bad projects. So to go into something like a loom, when you have no understanding of a loom and not really a grasp on wood, you're kind of asking for trouble there. A loom is something you don't want to make a few bad ones before you make a good one. It's not that easy, unless you want to devote the rest of your life to making looms. But there are plans for looms available online, and like shaving horses, all that stuff. You can get plans. But half the time these people who make these plans have never actually built one. But I know they make plans for even looms out of PVC pipe, which to me is like a travesty, but they make them, and evidently they kind of work. But it's not something that you can just leap into. Now that banging here is woodpeckers establishing their territory by banging on any piece of metal they find. It makes a good sound. So I think that's on the fuel drum, the one that's been hammering all day. Oh, I've been seeing a lot of cottontails. I've got a lot of cottontails. They go in cycles, and I haven't seen it up here for years, but now I've got them. And after I cleared that out, every time I come up here in the morning, I got rabbits running all over. They're in that brush, and they travel back and forth. So, I've never had trouble with rabbits in the garden before, but the garden is right over there. So I'm going to have to do some really severe fencing, or them rabbits are going to clean me out. Either that or massacre all the rabbits. I'd kind of like to see the rabbits, but they're just tame as could be. You can walk up to with 5-10 feet of them, and they just sit there. So it's kind of funny. With the dogs here, but evidently they sneak away, because nobody's caught a rabbit yet. But I will have to do some pretty serious fencing. Well, I'm back to work. I had to cut this one up, but like I say, I get asked for plans a lot, and well, it's like people asking for recipes. If you need the recipe for something, you probably aren't going to be able to really cook it right anyway. And every time I've done that, like with plans for a loom or something, people won't follow the plan. Or sometimes can't, like they can't get, how can you get a 2-inch piece of wood when everything is really like 1.5 inches? You have to cut down a big beam. So they don't follow the directions, and if you don't follow the directions and you get inventive and you don't know what you're doing, the same with cooking. If you don't know what you're doing, it's not a time to get really inventive, but people do, and then it doesn't work. But I've had that even in reloading, where somebody wants to know a load that I'm using. I say I'm using this and this, and it doesn't work for them. And then, it turns out, they didn't have this, so they use this instead. And they made a lot of substitutions. Well, then it's not, following that recipe at all. So it doesn't surprise me that it doesn't work. And like in reloading, it can be dangerous. In this, you're just wasting your time. But for somebody looking for a loom, if you want a loom, rather than try to build one, they are around. They are available. But for me, I've always thought about making one, but, and I have directions for some real old looms, the dimensions and stuff. But there again, unless you're really, woodpecker is just determined. If you're really able to follow those directions, you probably wouldn't need the directions. You would have that skill already to know what you need, because you have to be familiar with looms. You have to know why you're using this wood in this place, why you're building this certain dimension. I mean, there's reasoning behind all that stuff. And if you can't grasp that reasoning, it's just not going to work for you. Well, back to work. But, you know, like I say, plans, that's something I really don't delve in. I don't even sketch stuff out. I know in my mind kind of what I want. Like this, I saw this piece of wood, and I thought, okay, that's a nice piece of wood. I think I could make a really nice tabletop off of that, you know, or like a desk kind of a thing, something like a 2 or 3 by 4 or 5, you know, something almost the size of my reloading bench, but just something, a small bench or desk to work at, like with the computer, that sort of thing, but out of my wood. You know, good oak, and I know where this tree came from, and I know, you know, the floor joists that are being used out of the other piece of the wood. So I know where all the wood came from, and I know where it goes. And it means more to me, but none of the wood gets wasted. Every little scrap, you know, gets turned into something, and then in the end, like there's that piece laying there, well, that's the outer growth, that's too soft for anything else, but it will be used for firewood. And even these odd little, you know, like when I trim the end off of blocks, you know, like say here, I'll grab one. Okay, this was, you can see it's actually got pine tar on it, but this was an end off of a piece. You know, I make pieces long and then cut them down when they go in spot, into place. But now I will take and I will split this into pins to use to nail like the flooring, because the flooring will be nailed into, that's why I'm making a floor joist so wide, because I've got a, like say if you butt 2 pieces up against it, there's going to be 4 pins. This will be made pins. I don't let any good piece of wood go to waste.